Joanna Hunt says, I wish it were true, but it probably isn't, that we could get back to a sound currency. What say you? Could America return to a silver or gold standard? Would it be a gradual change or the result of rebuilding after a dollar crash? Wow, it's a great question. Needless to say, the idea of the gold standard can be summed up pretty simply. You can print money, but you can't print gold. I've heard many people who are much more versed in economics than I am who said that the gold standard really is not realistic. That while a great deal of money has been inflated and while a great deal of money is fiat money that's not connected to anything, the fact of the matter is that the economy of the world now is so enormous. I think Dinesh D'Souza in his book was saying that the estimate for the amount of private property, he was talking about Stealing America, I think it's called. He was talking about how all of progressive politics are essentially just a giant heist. And so he started that chapter by saying, what's the most valuable thing in the world? If you wanted to steal something, what's the most valuable thing in the world? And Dinesh said that, in his opinion, the most valuable thing in the world is the private property held by the American people, which comes to $71 trillion. There's $71 trillion of private property in this country, apparently. And so if you're gonna do a heist, might as well go for the big pot, right? And that's $71 trillion. So look, you can't really connect $71 trillion plus the economy of the rest of the world, which is easily $100 trillion, I would say, at least that. My God, it's got to be at least that. Maybe $200 trillion total. I don't know. But there's not enough gold for that. However, with that said, the idea of a gold standard is superb because the gold standard was you can print money, but you can't print gold. Gold is constant in value. So how do you get back to a currency that works? When we did it for a while, it just like anything else in this world, it just requires discipline, right? I mean, you'd basically have to pay off this debt or do something along the lines of paying off this debt, and you'd have to simply eliminate this idea of fiat currency, that you can't just print money. Maybe require a constitutional amendment. I mean, I don't see any of this particularly happening voluntarily. I'm sure it will happen involuntarily. But if you were to do it voluntarily, you probably would need a constitutional amendment that was a balanced budget amendment, and also an amendment that, that basically, you could probably do this in one amendment, that called for a balanced budget with a surplus of a set amount for a set period of time until the debt was paid off. And I think that's where you're looking at 50 to 100 years, something like that. And from that point forward, you could not simply print money. You could increase the monetary supply to match the economy, and I'm not very clear on how that works. I know it can work. That you're not just printing money just to have money to spend that wasn't there before. Because when you print money out of nothing, it makes the existing money worth less. It makes it worthless over time. So I think that could probably be accomplished, and I think that once you set a path to, hey, from now on we're in the black, the government's in the black, and from now on we're paying down the debt. And if we were to look at it that way and treat money like it was real money, like it was our money instead of somebody's money, then we would basically say, well, what are we actually paying for here in terms of federal taxes? And I gave this some thought. It's like, what is an appropriate tax burden for the American people? And the answer is to frugally pay for all of the parts of the government that are outlined in the Declaration of Powers. When the Constitution says here's what the federal government is supposed to do, then we need to pay for those things as frugally as possible. And we need to get rid of two things that are driving this budget up, among many things. The first thing we need to get rid of is cost-plus purchasing, where Lockheed Martin decides to build the F-35 fighter, let's say, and it's on a cost-plus basis, which means that the federal government's going to pay Lockheed Martin what it costs to build the fighter. Then they're going to add some percentage of profit. Let's just say, for the sake of it, 6%, just whatever it is. So if you've got a fighter and you're on a cost-plus procurement plan, what does that do to incentive? Well, if you're Lockheed Martin and you get 6% of what it cost as profit, and you don't have to pay any of these costs. The government's going to pay the cost no matter what the cost is, and you get a percentage of the profit based on the cost. Then what do you want to do to the cost? You want to run the cost up as high as you possibly can, right? That's why this program costs $1 trillion and it doesn't work, because it's cost plus. If, on the other hand, we were buying a next-generation fighter jet and we were doing it the way we used to do it, we would say, hey, we've got, pick a good-sized number, we've got $200 billion to spend, aviation companies, $200 billion, we're going to need 1,000 of these things. And we have $200 billion to spend for it. That's our budget. That's what we're going to spend. And then, this would be back in the days when they were independent companies, then Northrop and Lockheed and Boeing and North American and Grumman and all these guys would build a fighter at their expense. They would put their own company money into it. You'd have 4 or 5 of these different models, and they would have a fly-off. They'd just run them through the paces, and whichever one performed the best got the whole pot. Congratulations, Boeing. You've got the best design, and through all the different tests we've run, maybe you didn't win all of them, but you're the best airplane out of the bunch that were selected. You get the $200 billion, and that's what it costs. And we have a contract now. We're going to get 1,000 planes for $200 billion. And if your costs go higher, that's unfortunate for you, but we're not paying a penny more, and we are going to get our 1,000 planes, and they are going to do what this plane did. See? Now, where's the incentive? Now the incentive is to get them out the door cheaply and quickly and efficiently and, on budget. So that's one thing you got to get rid of. And Scott and I were talking about this the other day on Trifecta between the segments. One of the things that's just got to happen is we've got to get back to blank sheet budgeting. Most people don't realize this. I'm not very well versed on this myself, but most people don't realize that we don't sit down and say, how much money does NASA need this year? What we do is we say, how much money did NASA spend last year, and what are we going to raise it by? 6%, 2%, 1%. Always going to raise it, never going to lower it. And that's why agencies spend all of the money they have and ask for more. You may not need, not to put too fine a point on it, folks, but NASA's budget in 2014 was $8.5 billion, I want to say, and it was $8.5 billion in constant dollars in 2006. And the only difference between the $8.5 billion they spent in 2006 and the $8.5 billion they spent in 2014 was in 2006 they were flying space shuttles into space, and in 2014 they're not. We're not flying anything into space. So why does it have the same budget? If we cut the space shuttle program, and that was an expensive program, you would think that NASA's budget would be drastically reduced, but you'd be wrong, because all budgets are immortal and they grow like cancer. They never get smaller, they only get bigger, and they cannot be killed ever. So if you were to basically say every year, nope, we're not going to take the existing budget and add a percentage, we're just going to say, make the case for what you need, and we'll review it, and we'll see if it looks like it's reasonable, the same way you would do with any kind of estimate if somebody wanted to put an extension on your house. That's what you do. You get a budget proposal, you'd look at it, and you'd say, yeah, this seems reasonable. This seems a little high. This guy's kind of lowballing it. Boom. It's a standing army. NASA's a job program. The TSL is, the TSA is a jobs program. The TSL is a jobs program for yours truly, but that's the Stratosphere Lounge. The Transportation Safety Authority is a jobs program. It hires hundreds of thousands of people. And we did a test recently where they tried to sneak bombs and weapons through the TSA, carefully, kind of a red flag operation where we test our own defenses. And I would have been shocked. I would have been shocked if 5% of the weapons and bombs gotten through. If 5% of the total attempts had succeeded, I would have been shocked and appalled. Turns out that 95% of them got through. They stopped 5%. 95% of the fake weapons and bombs that they tried to get through the TSA got through. 95%. Where, except for the government, would that program and those administrators and those people responsible still be employed? Where, except for the government, if you did 5% of the work that you were supposed to do? And in a world where a 1% failure could be catastrophic. Is a term for manufacturing, and again, it's not my strong suit, but there's a manufacturing term, and I know the comment section is probably going to light up, but I think it's a 6 Sigma, and I think that means it's 6 standard deviations. It's a measure of quality control, and basically a 6 Sigma is 6 standard deviations. That means that the percentage error I don't know the exact numbers, but it's fractions of 1%, small fractions of 1%. That's considered acceptable manufacturing error. And 95%, man. Yeah. If you had a company that was a private security company, let's say you're doing a concert, and you found out that 100 people tried to get in illegally, and 95 of them succeeded, what would you do with that private company? You betcha.